So we've had a very exciting quarter. We were able to successfully launch robotaxi, so providing our first rides with no one in the driver's seat with paying customers in Austin. And as some may have noted, we've already expanded our service area at Austin. It's bigger and longer, and it's going to get even bigger and longer. We were expecting to really greatly increase the Austin service area to well in excess of what competitors are doing. And that's hopefully in a week or so, 2 weeks.
Yeah, couple of weeks.
Couple weeks or so. And then we're getting the regulatory permission to launch in the Bay Area, Nevada, Arizona, and Florida, and a number of other places. So as we get the approvals and we prove out safety, then we'll be launching autonomous ride hailing in most of the country. And I think we'll probably have autonomous ride hailing in like half the population of the US by the end of the year. That's at least our goal, subject to regulatory approvals. I think we'll technically be able to do it. So assuming we have regulatory approvals, it's probably addressing half the population of the US by the end of the year. But we are being very cautious. We don't want to take any chances. And so we're gonna go cautiously, but the service areas and the number of vehicles in operation will increase at a hyper exponential rate. So, add some other notable things. Model Y in June became the best-selling car in Turkey, Netherlands, Switzerland, and Austria. It is, I believe, the best-selling car of any kind in the world still. And autonomy is a big factor there. So even without supervised, even with just supervised self-driving, it's a huge selling point. And it's worth noting that we do not actually yet have approval for supervised FSD in Europe. So our sales in Europe, we think, will improve significantly once we are able to give customers the same experience that they have in the US. This is, I think, a very important point to convey. And we've been working with the main country regulator, which is the Netherlands. And I think we're close to getting approval with the Netherlands. Then it's going to go to the EU. It's quite a, Kafka-esque. In fact, Kafka had no idea that's something like the EU could exist beyond Kafka's challenges with bureaucracy. But we will get the approvals. And I think we'll get, some people in Europe will have an experience similar to that of the US in most of Europe this year, hopefully at least partially in this quarter. And then we also have some regulatory challenges in China, which we're hoping to unblock shortly, because we also provide supervised FSD in China currently, but we don't unblock that soon. That's another major. It really is the single biggest demand driver. And then within the US, as we get confident about safety in different geographic areas, we'll loosen up on how much somebody has to be laser focused, have their eyes laser focused on the road, because that's been a common complaint. In fact, it does create an odd safety issue where people will sometimes disengage autopilot, then do something, change the radio, or maybe look at the phone, drive with their knee, and then re-engage autopilot, which obviously is less safe than simply keeping autopilot on. So anyway, that experience will improve in the next several weeks. Because we're focused on Austin with no one in the driver's seat, the production release of autopilot is actually several months behind what people experience on a robotaxi in Austin. So now we have the robotaxi that was launched. We'll be adding back those elements so that there will be a step change improvement in the autopilot experience for people outside of Austin. This is really, as you can tell, this is very much sort of autonomy is the story. Like we need the physical product, without which you cannot have autonomy. But once you have a physical product, you need the autonomy is what amplifies the value to stratospheric levels. We also launched the Tesla Dyna, which has been a huge hit. It actually got worldwide attention, which is unusual for a Dyna. Dynas don't typically get headline news around Earth. But this is a pretty special Dyna. And if you're in the LA area, it's worth visiting. It's sort of a shiny beacon of hope in an otherwise sort of bleak urban landscape, frankly. So really quite a lovely experience. Great job by the Tesla team there. Up on the full self-driving front, continue talking about that. We're continuing to make significant improvements just with the software. So we're expecting to increase the parameter count. Actually, at this point, we think we can probably almost 10x the parameter. Roughly 10x the parameter count. So this is actually a very tricky thing to do because as you increase the parameter count, you get to choke on memory bandwidth. But we currently think we can 10x the parameter count from what people are currently experiencing. That's so not just 4x, actually 10x increase in parameter count. And so there's still a lot of improvement on the existing hardware to happen. Energy is growing really well, despite headwinds from tariffs and various supply chain challenges. The Megapack is expanding capacity quickly, and we have upgrades to the Megapack that will make it even better. And we had record Powerwall deployments again in Q2. So I think batteries are just going to be a massive thing. The scale of battery demand is, I think, not that many people appreciate just how gigantic the scale of battery demand is. The way to think about it is that the US sustained power output of the US grid is around 1 terawatt, but average usage is less than half a terawatt. If you add batteries to the mix, you can run the power plants 24/7 at full capacity, thus more than doubling the energy output per year of the United States, just with batteries. But that's, again, big deal. It's a really big deal. Optimus. So we're evolving the Optimus design and really getting Optimus to the point where it is a phenomenal design. So we're in Optimus version 2 right now, sort of 2.5. Optimus 3 is an exquisite design, in my opinion, and it will be an incredible, as I've said many times before, I predict it will be the biggest product ever. It's a very hard problem to solve. You have to design every part of it from physics first principles. There's nothing that's off the shelf that actually works. So you're going to design every motor, gearbox, power electronics, control electronics, sensors, the mechanical elements. You've also got to train the Optimus to use its limbs and its sensors with a neural net. But we'll be applying the same techniques that were applied for a car, which is essentially a four-wheel robot. And Optimus is a robot with arms and legs. So the same principles that apply to optimizing AI inference on the car applied to Optimus, because they're both really robots in different forms. And Tesla, it is important to note that Tesla is by far the best in the world at real-world AI. Like a clear proof point for that would be if you compare it to Tesla to Waymo. Waymo's got, the car is festooned with God knows how many sensors. And yet, isn't Google good at AI? Yes, but they're not good at real-world AI. Thus far, Tesla is actually much better than Google by far, and much better than anyone at real-world AI. And by far, Tesla has the best inference efficiency. Like, I think a key figure for AI is, what is the intelligence per gigabyte? People talk about parameters, blah, blah, blah. But I think we're stop talking about parameters and talk about gigabytes, because with the parameters, you can have 4-bit parameters, 8-bit parameters, 16-bit parameters. But the actual constraints in the hardware are how many gigabytes of RAM and how many gigabytes per second can you transfer from RAM. Therefore, it is not a parameter constraint. It is a byte constraint. And Tesla has the highest intelligence density of any AI by far. And I have a lot of insight into this with XAI. XAI Grok is the smartest AI overall, but Grok 4 is a giant beast. They're sort of at the terabyte levels. And so it's kind of important to note Tesla has the best intelligence density. And intelligence density will be a very big deal in the future. It is now. So with Optimus 3, which is really the right design, it's like it doesn't have, at this point, there's no significant flaws with the Optimus 3 design. But we are going to retool a bunch of things. So it's going to probably be prototypes of Optimus 3 end of this year and then scale production next year. We're going to try to scale Optimus production as fast as it's humanly possible to do so, and try to get to 1 million units a year as quickly as possible. We think we can get there in less than 5 years. That's my estimate, I guess. That's a reasonable aspiration, is 1 million units a year, 5 years. It seems like an achievable target. But in conclusion, so far 2025 has been a very exciting year. A lot of major milestones. Made clear demonstrable progress in autonomy that a lot of naysayers said we would not achieve. But it's worth noting that we have done what we said we were going to do. Doesn't mean we're always on time, but we get it done. And our naysayers are sitting there with egg on their face. So great progress by the Tesla team. And I do think if Tesla continues to execute well with vehicle autonomy and the human robot autonomy, it will be the most valuable company in the world. It's a lot of execution between here and there. It doesn't just happen. But provided we execute very well, I think Tesla has a shot at being the most valuable company in the world. Anyway, obviously I'm extremely optimistic about the future of the company. Best way to predict the future is to make it happen. And we're making it happen here with the Tesla team. So I'd just like to say thanks to all of our supporters. And I think we're going to tell you an incredibly exciting future. I think it'll be available for unsupervised personal use by the end of this year in certain geographies. We're just being very careful about it. And we're just being extremely paranoid. But I'm confident that by the end of this year, within a number of cities in the US, it'll be available to end users. Like the Optimus 3 design, as I mentioned earlier, is, I think, finally the right design. There'll be further optimizations, but I think there are fundamental changes that are needed for the Optimus 3 design. It has all the degrees of freedom that you really want or need. So we'll have prototypes of that in 3 months, and it's totally in production. We'll simply start production on that in the beginning of next year. The production ramp is simple. It's always going to predict the S-curve of your production ramp when something has got when everything is new, because the rate of production will move as fast as the least lucky and least confident element of the entire supply chain, as well as internal processes. So the more new stuff that is in a product, the slower the ramp can be because of unexpected supply chain interruptions or mistakes made internally. It's much easier to predict sort of the end of the S-curve or late in the S-curve than the beginning of the S-curve. And the beginning of the S-curve of the production ramp is, in any case, not really material for revenue purposes. The beginning of the S-curve, you're usually always negative gross margin, and you're debugging a lot of issues. So that's why, I feel like fairly confident in predicting things, or at least medium confident in predicting where we are in 5 years, but it's hard to predict where we are in a year or 2 years. So that's why I think 5 years, I think we could be at let me put this way, I'd be surprised if at the end of 5 years, 60 months from now, if we are not roughly making 100,000 Optimus robots a month in 60 months, I would be shocked. I think obviously, we're a publicly traded company. Shareholders are welcome to put forward any shareholder proposals that they'd like. I've recently encouraged that, and then have shareholders vote and act in accordance with the shareholder wishes. Great. Yeah, there's a lot of exciting things happening in the design studio. It's not like static. And really what's going to happen over the next several years is a fundamental transformation of the company from a pre-autonomy world to a post-autonomy. And I'm working on a new master plan to articulate that Tesla team. And there will be some teething pains as you transition from pre-autonomy to post-autonomy world. But I think the future vision for Tesla is incredibly exciting and will profoundly change the world in a good way. It sound like I'm or whatever, but I think let's just say if we execute on that plan effectively, we have to actually do that. Tesla will be the most valuable company in the world by far. Dojo 2, we expect to have Dojo 2 operating at scale sometime next year, with scale being somewhere around 100K A1200 equivalents. And AI 5, which is really, it's spectacular too. Use those words lightly. It's spectacular too. The AI 5 chip will be hopefully be in volume production around the end of next year. But that has a lot of potential. I think thinking about Dojo 3 and the AI 6 converged chip, it seems like intuitively we want to try to find convergence there, where it's basically the same chip that is used, where we use, say, 2 of them in a car or an Optimus, and maybe a larger number on a board, the kind of 512 on a board, something like that, if you want high bandwidth communication between the chips out of force serving, doing it burn serving. That sort of seems like intuitively the sensible way to go. Yeah, well, the Cybercab which is really optimized for autonomy. That I think has got probably sub 30 cents per mile potential over time, maybe 25. It's really, like if you design a car from scratch to be a cost optimized robotic taxi like Cybercab, you like, for example, we're not trying to make it, corner like incredibly well, like the Model 3 would, or Model S, or even Model Y. Like it's got all of our cars that are driven by people are super fun to drive. They've got incredible acceleration, the incredible cornering capability. But we're confident that very few people in a Cybercab want to be hurtling around. So we reduced the top end speed, which means we can use more efficient tires. We don't need as much acceleration. We don't need as much, big brakes. We want stopping distance, but we're not expecting it to be heavily used. It's a gentle ride. Essentially, if you design it for a gentle ride, and then you have a much more optimized design point. So that's why it seems probable it could achieve that. Especially if Optimus is, serving, cleaning up the car and doing maintenance and stuff. It's doing automatic charging. So I think it's going to, the actual cost per mile of Cybercab will be very low. The cost per mile of our existing fleet will be higher, but still very competitive. So maybe some number of 50 cents, I'm just guessing. Yeah, so this really, Tesla's road taxi fleet will go from tiny to gigantic in terms of operations in a pretty short period of time. Like my guess is it has a material impact on our financials around the end of next year. Yeah, that is a major concern to me, as I've mentioned in the past, and I hope that is addressed at the upcoming shareholders meeting. But yeah, it is a big deal. Like, I want to find that I've got so little control that I can easily be ousted by activist shareholders after having built, this army of humanoid robots. I think that, as I mentioned before, I think my control of a Tesla should be enough to ensure that it goes in a good direction, but not so much control that I can't be thrown out if I go crazy. Yeah, it's been a tough thing, because when we're doing AI Day, we find that some of our members have literally done a frame-by-frame examination of our slides, everything we say, and then copy us. So, I say, what's the trade-off? It does help with recruiting, but then competitors look very closely and copy us. I mean, that said, we should probably, I guess we could consider the shareholder meeting to be sort of we can maybe go into depth, some amount of depth at the annual shareholder meeting with respect to Optimus and AI and sort of our chip stuff, perhaps. Yeah, Tesla's also really underrated in terms of AI chip design as well as AI software. So, like, there's still not a chip that exists that we would prefer to put in our car. That is an AI chip that we would prefer to put in the car over our own, and even though it's been now out for several years. And we're confident that the AI chip will be a profound game changer. In fact, it's so powerful that we'll have to nerf it, or to some degree, for markets outside of the US, because it flows way past the export restrictions. So unless the export restrictions change, we actually will have to nerf our AI chip, which is kind of weird. Hopefully we keep raising the bar on export restrictions, otherwise it gets a bit silly. But we'll have a bunch of Optimus robots on stage at the shareholder meeting. The Optimus lab is cool to see. It basically looks like the set of Westworld. You get robots in various stages. Some of them are, in various stages of repair. Like, I don't know, some combination of like the Tatooine junkyard and Westworld. It's very cool. And Optimus is walking around the office here in Palo Alto. So 24/7 is just walking around like it's normal. I think, and we saw Optimus, like, the Tesla diner, so they bug one. Yeah, so we'll go from a world where robots are rare to where they're so common that you don't even look up. We haven't really thought hard about that. Like, we need to make sure it works when the vehicles are fully under our control. And it's kind of one step at a time here. We don't want to jump the gun. As I said, we're being paranoid about safety. So it's like, but I guess it would, like, next year I'd say confidently next year. I'm not sure when next year, but confidently next year, people would be able to add or subtract their car to the Tesla fleet. Just like an Airbnb or just about kind of vending process. Well, as soon as there is a clear cash flow stream associated with any product that you can debt finance it. Most people still don't know. Yeah. But the vast majority of people don't know it exists. And it's still like half of Tesla owners who could use it haven't tried it even once. And they don't actually realize. Obviously, this is something we want to educate them on. So we've got to, when they come in for service, we'll reach out to them, send them like videos of how to make it work. And it's such a shocking thing. They don't think a car is capable of this. So you have to show them and get them comfortable with turning it on and off. It's so trivial, but it's like saying you've got a cat that can sing and dance, but it just looked like a normal cat. And you're like, until you see the cat sing and dance and talk, you're like, you assume it's just a cat. That's Tesla FSD. Yes. Our car is intelligent. Well, we're in this like weird transition period where we'll lose a lot of incentives in the US. We'll have incentives actually in many other parts of the world, but we'll lose them in the US. And we're still at the relatively early stages of autonomy. On the other hand, autonomy is most advanced and most available from a regulatory standpoint in the US. So, does that mean like we could have a few rough quarters? Yeah, we probably could have a few rough quarters. I'm not saying we will, but we could. Q4, Q1, maybe Q2. But once you get to autonomy at scale in the second half of next year, certainly by the end of next year, I think I'd be surprised if Tesla's economics are not very compelling. Because once you come on the wire, there's like the cat out of the bag there. Dancing cat that can sing and dance, but it can talk and sing and dance. But that's the cool part. Yeah, fundamentally, the biggest obstacle remains that people just don't have enough. Some people don't. The desire to buy the car is very high. Just people don't have enough money in their bank account to buy it. Literally, that is the issue. Not a lack of desire, but a lack of ability. So the more affordable we can make the car, the better. I think it will be a very big deal when people can release their car to the fleet and have it earn money for them, which, like I said, I'm think I feel confident in saying that'll happen next year in the US at least. And in the US, we're legally allowed, appropriate disclaimers, and that'll make the affordability dramatically greater. Just like if you have an Airbnb and you rent out your home when you're not there, or rent out a guest room or guest house, something like that, the affordability of your home is much greater. Well, they are doing different things here. So, the XAI is doing terabyte scale models and multi-terabyte scale models. Tesla's 100 times smaller models. So one's real world AI and one's kind of, I guess, artificial superintelligence type thing. The really kind of the genesis for XAI was that there were certain people who simply would not join Tesla, AI engineers, because they wanted to work on ASI. They would join Tesla, and I was like, well, maybe they'll join a new company. And now I think the Tesla problem is extremely important, but not everyone agrees with me on that. And so rather than have them join, OpenAI or Google or some other company, it's like, might as well have them create a company in that regard, right? Which is XAI. So that's, and people can make a decision. Do they want to work on super intelligence data center or real world AI? They're both compelling problems, but some people want to work on one, some want to work on the other.
Salut mes amis, je m'appelle Emmanuel Hunard. J'ai travaillé à Tesla pendant 7 ans et maintenant je fais des vidéos sur mes chaînes X et YouTube sur la technologie de Tesla et les voitures autonomes de Tesla. Je pense que ça va sauver beaucoup de vies et j'ai besoin de votre aide. Si vous pouvez aimer cette vidéo et abonnez-vous, suivez-moi et nous pouvons aider d'autres à savoir plus sur cette technologie qui va sauver des vies. Un clic à la fois. Let's go Tesla et restez curieux.